Congressional investigators said they have found troubling irregularities in the FBI's investigation of Hillary Clinton and her email server. According to a report in The Hill, FBI agents had their investigation micromanaged by higher-level officials in contrast to ordinary practice. You know what that means. The investigators also told The Hill they found evidence the FBI began drafting an exoneration of Hillary Clinton before it had even gathered all the relevant evidence or interviewed more than a dozen key witnesses. Chris Swecker is a former assistant director of the FBI, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Swecker, thanks for coming on.
Evening, Tucker.
So you've seen this report. I don't think anybody, any American, wants to believe the FBI is not on the level or subject to political manipulation, but that's a conclusion I'm reluctantly reaching. What's your conclusion?
Well, as an experienced investigator, it doesn't take a congressional investigation to tell me that nothing about that investigation was right. I mean, those of us that have conducted federal criminal investigations know that you use the grand jury, you use search warrants, you don't hand out immunities like candy. I mean, everything in that investigation runs contrary to the way a real, credible, thorough FBI investigation is conducted.
So give us, as you were watching this, give us the specific examples that tipped you off that this was not unfolding as it ought to have been.
Well, first and foremost, in any complicated federal investigation, the basic tool of the trade is a grand jury.
Right.
And use of the grand jury to obtain records. You don't go to witnesses and say, "Mother, may I have that computer hard drive? May I have those emails?" You use subpoenas and process and grand jury and search warrants and that sort of process. So that was the tip-off from the beginning. So many deals were made with people not knowing what kind of information they had, and the deals being made simply because they lawyered up and didn't want to talk to FBI agents. That's when you throw them in front of a grand jury.
Well, exactly, because I mean, of course, a lot of subjects, most subjects, I would think, lawyer up, and nobody wants to talk to the FBI, of course. But the FBI doesn't normally cave to that, does it?
No. You look at when Jim Comey was the Deputy Attorney General running the Corporate Fraud Task Force and I was running the Criminal Division, I mean, we played hardball in those investigations. You used grand jury process. You didn't just ask for records, and you didn't give them an opportunity to hand over what they wanted to hand over. And if they did lawyer up, you went to the trouble of throwing them in front of a grand jury to put their statement on the record, or they can take the fifth, and then you can make a decision as to whether to grant them immunity at that time. But none of that was done in this case. This was like driving a car with the brakes on.
Why wasn't it done, do you think?
You know, that's what puzzles myself and all of my former colleagues, people who have retired from the FBI, from executive level positions on down to the street level. The only thing I can come up with is that Director Comey placed the investigation in the hands of his inner circle, and they had their own agenda, obviously. When we've seen that from some of the information that has since come out, the texts, etc.
So you think it was political?
I think that there were people inside that inner circle, in the Comey inner circle, that had their own predetermined opinions about about Hillary Clinton and the president, or what then was a president-elect or someone running for president.
So let me ask you about something that I found really striking. Tell me if you had the same reaction. So we now have documents that came out in a lawsuit that show, internal documents from the FBI, that when the then Attorney General Loretta Lynch had that famous meeting on the tarmac with Bill Clinton, whose wife was being investigated at the time, the FBI's first reaction was not to figure out how did that happen. The first reaction was to find out how news of it leaked. That seemed like a very weird reaction to me.
It's not the FBI that I know, and as I said, my former colleagues that I compare notes with all the time, that's not how things were handled. And in former Director Comey's rationale, shall we say, for making this prosecutive decision that the FBI director has no business making, that she was not to be prosecuted, that was based on that tarmac meeting. Well, if that were the case, all he had to do was hand the investigation to the Attorney General's office, let her recuse herself from making that decision, knock it down to her number 2 level person, and then if that didn't happen, then maybe raise the issue publicly.
It's really distressing to watch this. Thank you for your perspective on that. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Well, in order to get the federal government funded. Democrats are demanding that DACA recipients be given amnesty. They may try to shut down the government if they don't get it. That story next.